All right, here's a statistic for you. Every year, the US and Canada combined waste 70 million metric tons of food. That could feed millions of people. And globally, that number is way higher. According to the UN, just a quarter of the food wasted each year could go towards feeding the 900 million people across the planet that go hungry every single day. The food wasted across the world, most of it is perfectly edible. Like this apple right here. You know, maybe it's a little bit bruised. Maybe it's a little bit misshapen. But it's still crunchy. It's still sweet. Honestly, it's perfectly edible. And the food like this that gets wasted, most of it just rots in landfills. And that creates methane, which is actually a greenhouse gas that is 25 times more potent than CO2 over a 100-year period. So I have a question for you. What if food waste was no longer a problem? Instead, it was a climate solution. Hey all, it's Bradlin Oaks, your host here on Climate Solutions Road Trip, and we're in for an exciting episode today where we're talking all about food waste, both at your own home as well as commercial food waste. So let's hit the road. Let's start with basics. In Canada, food waste is staggering. I mean, there's a lot of countries across the world that food waste is staggering in. But according to Second Harvest, 46.5% of all food produced in Canada is lost or wasted. The amount of food waste produced by the food system has declined by 20% since 2019. Yay, that's good news. But avoidable food waste, that's food that could be eaten by people, has gone up by 6.5%. 41.7% of the food wasted could be redirected to support Canadians. And 23% of avoidable food waste is caused by best before dates from processing to purchase. The economic cost of this waste, I'm going to let you guess for a second. $49 billion every single year. And the environmental cost? Well, food waste produces 56.5 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent emissions annually, more than the emissions of Canada's entire airline industry. And globally, the UN Food and Agricultural Organization, or the FAO, estimates that food waste generates 8 to 10% of total global greenhouse gas emissions. If food waste were a country, it would be the third largest emitter in the world, behind only China and the United States. Today we're in Strathcona County, where the Circular Innovation Council is running one of the country's, Canada's, first commercial food waste pilot programs. Now this aims to cut food waste in a commercial setting and could be actually a game changer if it was implemented countrywide.
Residential organic collection is often, I guess you could almost say, sort of gets like a wholesale price on composting services because it's this very densified, very efficient transportation route, and a lot of the cost of composting, like as in the fee that you would pay to have your bins tipped, is due to the transportation costs of the actual that the hauler has to incur in order to drive the route, and so when you have a really densified system, they can provide really good services in terms of costing. But when it's kind of a scattered or fragmented, kind of like one-off piecemeal system that they often get with the business or commercial side of things, then it's harder for them to offer those rates unless you're like a really big grocery retailer or like a really big food processing facility or something. Often the smaller guys get left out. So although we have these like big national companies, also when aggregated and combined together, all of the small businesses, especially independent ones, kind of like together produce the same volume of food waste in the region as 5 to 10 of the larger ones. And so it's important to be able for them to be able to access those services as well. Um, yeah, so the idea was to kind of like create this program, reach out, recruit a bunch of interested businesses and institutions in the area onto our pilot model, um, and and be able to get those negotiated prices down for being able to tip their compost, and also partnering with local food rescue services. Like the Seed in Guelph, Wellington. We also have a national partnership with Second Harvest. Um, just so they have, if you have edible food, please, if you can, like use these convenient systems that maybe you didn't know about or know how to use, which we would provide, training and awareness and education on, as well as when you have inedible food, please divert it from landfill through these composting services that we're trying to help you better access. Um, so that's kind of where the idea started. It's a very similar model that we used in Strathcona County and in the town of Westlock in Alberta.
Right now, or as of 2024, 25.5% of people in 10 provinces live in food insecure households. That is almost 10 million people. And a quarter of those are children. Yeah, 2.5 million children live in households that struggle to afford the food they need. At the same time, we're throwing out enough food to feed every single person in the country, twice over. Food redistribution platforms like FoodMesh, Second Harvest, Too Good to Go, and Odd Bunch are helping to fill a critical gap. And redistributing food from businesses, grocery stores, large organizations, and getting all the data to do so is an important step to not only stopping food waste, but also helping millions of people across the country.
Being able to collect that both climate, social, and economic, so I guess environmental, social, and economic impacts of these programs, I guess help like round out the narrative around food waste, diversion, and the importance of these circular systems that we are trying our best to put in place in our societies. And, just because something's been there for a while doesn't mean it's working properly. Um, so kind of, overhauling the efficiencies of these systems and being able to collect the valuable data on them is ultimately what will help with any sort of scale to them.
The Circular Innovation Council believes that replicating what they found in their multiple pilot programs, including the one in Strathcona County, will be crucial for changing how food waste is diverted within Canada.
In terms of replicability, we like to say replicability instead of scalability, because scalability, it tends to give the impression that we'd somehow like make like a single small area like a national program within the same context and model, and that's just not the case for a lot of the more complex challenges that we're facing in general in our society, including waste and overconsumption. And so by creating a model that is flexible, we're able to like replicate it in different communities across Canada who are looking for those solutions, and looking for that data, and be able to tweak it and tailor it kind of to their like situation and their needs.
Every single town, city, and municipality across North America is different. So, of course, when they look at diverting their own food waste, they need to tailor their solution to their own situation.
Strathcona County was a really cool example. We were partnered with Leftovers as our food rescue operations, but they were also interested in taking on the model as like a nonprofit partner after, because they have local operations. So we go in, we start these pilots up, we run them for a set amount of time, and then we do our best to come up with a post-pilot strategy and hand it off. And in the past, it's been to nonprofit partners. But partway through, the municipality of Strathcona County took a huge interest in the structure of the program itself, and possibly using it as a future early adopters program to inform regulations, maybe to inform investment in larger processing capacity for the region. So they're in the middle of kind of exploring those things right now, but we ended up handing it off to them after the 6 months, and they're still running it.
And I mean, it's not just good for the planet. A recent study done by REP and the World Resource Institute says that for every $1 invested in food waste reduction, there's actually a return of $14. So yes, 14 times the return on any investment. So I mean, it's not just good for the climate, it's actually really good for business as well. Okay, quick transition away from the road into my kitchen. Why, you may ask? Well, we have to talk about household food waste because household food waste actually accounts for about 50% of all food wasted in Canada every single year. On average, a household will waste 140 kilograms worth of food. The monetary equivalent of that, $1,700. So literally, we are wasting money and not helping the planet by letting that food go to waste. So it's really important that we have a plan for any food in our household. Try to not let it get past the expiry date. If it's past a best before date, making sure to look at that food item to see if it's still okay to eat. Now, it's not just households that contribute to food waste. There are wasteful processes at every single step of the process, from food that is grown to the manufacturing, to the packaging, to the distribution. So if we think about it, there's a lot of really good food and produce that is grown on farms that doesn't meet the standards for grocery stores. It might look a little bit wonky, so it doesn't end up there. We also see that during processing of any sorts of foods that we have some of that wasted. We also see just processes to get them to grocery stores and grocery stores not selling the right amount, leading to food waste. So, I mean, there are problems at every single step. And of course, there is so much more to stopping food waste, to household food waste, more than composting, more than keeping it out of landfill. So we're going to virtually jump over to British Columbia today, to Vancouver, to talk to Megan from Love Food, Hate Waste, and FoodMesh to get an idea of what we can do as individuals, as families, as consumers to ensure that we're getting a little less food waste out there in the world, and also what programs are in place across Canada to also prevent some of that food waste from ending up in landfill or getting discarded when it could be perfectly good to use.
We're a Vancouver based social enterprise and we've been around for 9 years, and our mission is reducing food waste. And so, what we've been doing in those 9 years is working closely with food businesses to help them divert their unsold food to higher end uses so it doesn't go to waste streams. So, primarily, this means diverting what is edible to hunger relief organizations. So, charities, the food banks, the people who are really helping people who are facing food insecurity. The food that isn't human edible anymore, we will try to connect with local hobby farmers so that food could be used to nourish their animals. And then for food that is no good for humans, no good for animals, then in that instance, we try to help support that food going to compost so it's not going in landfill. So that's what FoodMesh has been doing. And then in January of this year, we're very excited to be presented with an opportunity to take the Love Food, Hate Waste campaign from the National Zero Waste Council, who brought it to Canada and made it a national awareness or behaviour change campaign focused on helping prevent food waste at a household level. So we were really excited for this opportunity because it meant that we went from speaking primarily to businesses to reduce their food waste to now talking to all Canadians to find ways and strategies to reduce their food waste. So really kind of closing the loop.
Through their programs, FoodMesh diverts about 1 million meals a month, and so far has diverted 63 million meals. So the solutions are out there.
Just very, very small shifts in how we're shopping, how we're storing, and how we're using up our food. And so, we found through this campaign that the most food waste comes down to buying too much, cooking too much, or not storing foods as best as you possibly can. And so these are things that we can very easily change. And the first thing I would say is, something as very simple as just planning your meals, taking stock of what do you have in your fridge and your pantry currently, what do you have planned that week, coming together with the people in your household who you're sharing meals with, and just looking at what is the week ahead for you. This is something we do in my house every Sunday night. As a family, we review what's coming up this week, what's in the fridge that needs using up, bringing those older items to the front so we know to use them first. And really just taking stock. And that's something that everybody can do. That doesn't require any money. It just provides a bit of time allocated to that practice. And then creating a list. Like if you plan your meals for the week, you create a list for what you need, knowing what you already have in your fridge, and taking that list to the supermarket, not forgetting it, and not being swayed by those deals that kind of make you want to buy the things that you don't necessarily have a plan for. So really having a plan and sticking to it. So that's one big action that people can take. Another one is kind of getting creative with what you've got. So if you have leftovers, you're not quite sure how to use up, the roast potatoes from your dinner last night, is finding new ways to repurpose those. So you can maybe fry them up with some other veggies, and then what you have is a hash, and maybe throw a fried egg on top, whatever it is. It's getting creative with those leftovers. And the Love Food Hate Waste website has got so many ideas for how to use up these leftovers. Or, how to revive wilted vegetables. We've all found those carrots in the bottom of the fridge that are kind of bendy and looking a bit sad, and your instinct is just to throw it into the compost or your garbage. But the fact is, these can be revived. You could even put a carrot in, a jar of water, put it in the fridge, and you'll find within a day it's plump and it's back to as beauty that it was when you first bought it. Same with wilted vegetables. You can put them in icy water and that will help to revive them. So there's so many different ways to revive food that you might have overlooked or forgotten about. Even just understanding, the true meaning of best before dates. This is a date that is intended to indicate the peak freshness of food, whereas some people take it as a instruction that the food is bad after that date, which is not true. And we actually know from latest research from Second Harvest that 23% of food waste that occurs in Canada is due to the misuse and misunderstanding of best before dates. And so just by understanding what the true meaning of best before dates means, we can make the most of that food. So just because a date passes on, say, your jug of milk, it doesn't mean that it's not good to consume after that particular date. It's just when it's at its absolute peak freshness as estimated by the manufacturer. So that's another way that people can reduce food waste at home. And another one is just like how to store that food correctly. So knowing where in the fridge is most optimal for different items, having certain items in the coldest part of the fridge, that will just help make sure that that food stays fresher for longer so that you've got longer with it. So those are just some of the ways that people can just make those tiny actions that can hopefully help them get the most out of the food that they love.
And if you want more information, there are plenty of resources online.
Yeah, the Love Food Hate Waste website has loads of resources to help with that, kind of helping to determine what is still good to eat, what's not, how best to, as I mentioned, store and revive those things, and to provide some guidance there on how long food will typically last if it is stored correctly. So the Love Food Hate Waste website is a great go-to for people looking to have answers to those questions. And if there's information that isn't on there that people are looking for that doesn't exist, then email us, let us know. We work with experts in this field who can help us curate that information and make that available. So we invite suggestions from people who are looking for solutions to their food waste problems, because we would love to be able to provide those resources to help them take those small actions.
And according to Project Drawdown, eliminating food waste could lead to over 100 gigatons reduction in CO2 equivalency. That's a huge reduction. So eliminating food waste isn't just good for our wallets, good for our fridges, it is good for the planet. It is a climate solution. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please click the like button, please click subscribe. I'm doing all the YouTube things here, and make sure to follow along here on Climate Solutions Road Trip.